There's great literature that has come out of great crisis. Viktor Frankl, who was a survivor of the Holocaust, wrote a book called The Search for Meaning. In fact, he founded a whole body of psychology called logotherapy, which is about meaning making. The Nobel Prize laureate Elie Wiesel writes about his experiences coming out of Germany. And all of these writers who have gone through horrific things somehow constructed meaning. What was it? For many of them, the answer was not the Holocaust was the will of God, because it was not. 9/11 and other catastrophes are not God's judgment against us. These deeds are often done by people who have misguided understandings of the meaning of life, or that life is purposeless. Viktor Frankl said in his book that meaning cannot be given. Meaning has to be discovered. What I love about the end of the first chapter of Ecclesiastes that Nancy read for us this morning is that in his despair, while acknowledging that life had pain in it, the philosopher Solomon said, I sought for wisdom. It is often through life's difficulties that we learn our greatest lessons and begin to place meaning. So often when tragedy hits friends of ours, it's hard to know what to say. As I said, some people think they're giving great comfort by saying it was God's plan or God's will. And I can tell you that is about as painful to hear as pouring salt in a wound. I believe Jesus came to heal the brokenhearted, not make hearts broken. But how do we find meaning when catastrophes like Katrina hit, or there's poverty, or there's pressures in our personal lives? How do we construct meaning? I cannot stand here this morning and prescribe 3 simple steps to give you meaning in life. In fact, I can't give you meaning. You have to work at it. And it is a process. But I believe, and I thought about it this week, about the profoundness of that which we do find important to us. What is your ultimate concern? What is it that is the most important thing in your life? What is it? You could say, you can have the rest, but you don't get this. One of the things about the theme of Ecclesiastes, the entire book gets into that material things do not give meaning. And yet we live in a culture where material acquisition seems to define who we are. Jesus said we are not, a man's life is not established by the abundance of his or her possessions. What gives you meaning? Let me put it to you another way. What brings you joy? What brings you that sense of joy and relief? For Mary Oliver, after the loss of her partner of over 30 years in great grief, she returned to faith and to nature. She was always in nature, but she saw nature as a place of the holy. And as we heard Sue read this morning, She went out in that particular poem, and much of this is autobiographical from my understanding of her life. She went and sat on the floor of the woods, on the grass and the ground, and deer walked by. And she imagined that conversation, wondering. They were trying to figure out who she was and why she was there. Many people have said to me, nature is where I feel the presence of God, or I connect to God. And yet there are those who believe that unless you are in a special building, a religious building, you cannot find or feel meaning or the presence of the holy. What I love about Thomas More's work, it is in the ordinary, in the everyday. I have the view that we experience the holy on a daily basis. For some of us, and I can't name all of the ways you do, it can be with music. It can be with nature. It can be that hike, or that book, or that musical instrument. For me, relationships between those that I love are absolutely sacramental. Absolutely holy. I love my library and all of the artifacts that I have from generations gone by that I've inherited from my family. But I'll tell you this morning, if I lost it all in a fire and had Catherine healthy and safe, I would have everything that I needed. Because that relationship is irreplaceable and sacred. I can go back, I feel like a heretic saying this, to Amazon.com or bookstores and replace the books. And if they're irreplaceable, so be it. But I cannot substitute that holy, daily encounter with the person that I love the most. What is it that informs you? Paul Tillich called it the ultimate concern, that which grounds us. If you lost it all, what would it be? You see, for in that holy, ultimate concern, in everyday life, we can experience God. Jesus taught this. Jesus said that when we give or have relationships with others, we are doing it to Him. We are to, in the words of Paul in Ephesians, love our lives as Christ loves the church.